This is Gemara Menachos, Daf Mem Aleph, and we're holding on Mem Amid Beis. We are 5 lines from the bottom as we continue the discussion of tzitzis. And as Purim is around the corner, anyone that would like to partner and grab the schos of Heilige Torah on Purim, please reach out. Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Zeira, Amar Rav Masna, Amar Shmuel. Tchelas ein b'mishom kilayim. Tchelas does not have an isser of kilayim. Va'afilu be'talis betura. And even in a talis, of course, as we've said many times, just refers to a garment. Even in a talis that is potter from the mitzvah of tzitzis, there will not be an issue that putting on tchelas will have an issue of shatnez. Says the Gemara, what in the world does that mean? My talis betura. What does it mean a talis that is potter? If you're going to tell me it doesn't have the requisite shear when you have to put on tzitzis. We learned in a brayso on the last line. A garment that a child can cover his head and the majority of his body. And v'hagadol, as we turn over to Mem Aleph Amud Aleph, v'hagadol yaitze b'baderech, so it covers the head and the majority of a child, and a gadol would go out wearing wearing this to the street. Derech ara, gadol yaitze b'derech arai, and an adult would wear this on a temporary nature. This is the shear. That what? Chayav is b'titz. Now Rashi just points out, this means she'ina balatzis balashuk. It doesn't mean that it's a full garment, because it's clearly quite small. It means it's covering enough of the body that would want to go out a little bit. This is the size that one is obligated in tzitzis. If it will not cover the majority of that of a child. Even though even if a child would go out with it, with regard to kilayim. And about this brayso, the brayso that's discussing the shear, we asked, what does that mean? If it means the same thing as regarding the isser of kilayim, that there's only going to not be an isser if it is the right shear. We learned, ein arai bekilayim. There's no such thing as temporary with regarding to kilayim, meaning even something that you wear for a moment. The isser of kilayim is automatic. Nothing to do with how long you wear it. If it is a garment, it's not a garment. There's an isser kilayim. So frag to Gemara, we said on the bottom of Amid Beis, we said a talis betura. You don't have to worry about tchilas of kilayim. You don't have to worry about shatnez. Frag to Gemara, what does that mean? Elamai betura. So what does it mean betura? Hatil lemuteles. 8 lines down. The first one line is lemuteles. It means if you put the tzitzis to a garment that already had tzitzis on it, the added on tzitzis is not a problem of shatnez, even though those tzitzis are doing absolutely nothing, because the garment already has tzitzis. Frak the Gemara of Amar Rav Zeira Chadazimna. But Rav Zeira already said this in. We had this yesterday. Remember the sugi of tassel, but also we had a Rav Zeira that said a chiddush that if you put tzitzis onto a garment that has tzitzis, you're allowed to wear it based on the new tzitzis after you remove the old one. And it's not an issue of tassel and asui. Responds the Gemara, Chada Mechlal de Chaverta Itmar. You're right, Rav Zeira didn't really say both of these dinim. We learn out one from the other. Tana Rabbanan, as we continue to more halachas of tzitzis, talis kefula, a garment that is folded, chayeves b'tzitzis. But Rav Shimon poiter, a talis kefula is chayev in tzitzis, and Rav Shimon says, nothing to do. It's going to be potter in tzitzis. What does this mean? Let's see in a moment. V'shavin, and they agree, shim kafla v'tafra. But if you fold it over and then you sew it up, shechayeves, that you're obvious. It says more tafra b'shita avada. Once you sew it up, it's a new baguette. Lo tzricha tinokta b'sichi. Says the Gemara that you only put a hook on it, a tack, a closure. That is the chiddush. So the first question we're all wondering is, why does Rav Shimon say this is pater? What does this mean? So let's look at Rashi for a quick moment. Rashi tells Kafula says arucha kishtayim. It's a doubly large talis, a kafla, and he folded over. So why does Rav Shimon say it's pater? Shem tifshat nimsa tzitzis b'emsael. Because if you fold it over and you put the tzitzis on the four corners now, when you open it up, boom, your tzitzis are going to be in the middle of the garment. So that doesn't work. But Zakti Gemara, if you sewed it, yeah. It's pashit. It means that you have a hook on it. And now we have a story. Rabba Baruna Klailebe Rava Bar Rav Chanachmin Chazielu Lahave. Miskasi Dal's Kafuli, so he's wearing such a garment. V'Ramle Chute and Iluyik Fila. He was wearing this folded garment, and tzitzis were on it on the corners, meaning on the crease, meaning in the middle. If Shita Va'asa Chuta Kamna De Reishi. So what happened? As always, the talis fell off. Eventually, it unfolded, and now he has tzitzis smack in the middle of the garment. Tzitzis are on his head. Amr le lavainu kanaf. So Rav Huna said to him, "Lavainu kanaf because Rachmana baraisa. This is not a corner. It's smack in the middle of the garment." Asa shade ikasi glima achriti. Rav Nachman threw it off. I mean, he took off this folded talis and put on a different garment. Amar le, Rabbi Ravuna said to me, Savris, chayvas gavru. What are you doing? Do you think you just remedy the situation? Do you think that tzitzis is a chayvas gavra, that by putting on a different beged, you're now fixing the problem? Meaning, every beged needs tzitzis. Chayvas talisu. It's an obligation of the talis, and therefore you have a talis right now that doesn't have tzitzis on it. Zil, go, Ramila, and fix that garment that you took off. Says the Gemara, let's bring a raya. Chasidim arishayim kivan sha'argu b'shalosh metilin b'tchilas. The moment they would start sewing the garment, they would put the tzitzis on it. Says the Gemara, no raya shayni chasidim the machmeri anav shayo. So we're learning over here an incredible, we now can call it a chumrah, the chumrah of the Chassidim Rishayim, which is not to even leave the garment on your shelf without tzitzis. Wearing it, of course, you cannot. But the question is, are you allowed to own? Are you allowed to leave? As in this story, he took off the garment, he put another one, he still got yelled at because you're not allowed to have such a garment. We say Chassidim Rishayim would actually be makbid on that. Says the Gemara, but this is upliga de malacha. And this is a machlokes amongst the malachim. Now, this is obviously a fascinating nikuda, something that needs to be dealt with. What are we quoting malachim over here? Okay, the malacha ashkechel Rav Katina. The malachim found Rav Katina de Mikasi Sadina that he was wearing a linen garment, and there was no tchelas. Why was there no tchelas? Because linen, we said, you can't put tchelas on it due to the problem of shatnez. Amar lei. So the malach said, Ketina, sadina bekayata, visara bela bisivva. You're wearing a linen garment in the summer and a woolen garment with rounded corners in the winter. Sar bela bisiva. Rashi tells us, what does this mean? It's a woolen garment, but it also didn't have tzitzis on it. Let's see that Rashi. Rashi Devrei Maskil Sar bela. Rashi says they have rounded corners, and therefore it's pater from tzitzis. So the malach said, it's a very important Gemara, as Ramesha quotes this, la'alacha netshuva, as to why one has to wear wool. The malach said, you're negating the mitzvah of tzitzis. You're wearing a garment that's not chayiv, and you rounded the corners. Tzitzis shal techeles matei Allah. What's going to be with the mitzvah of tzitzis of techeles? Amrulei Rav Ketina responded, Anshitu asay. Are you giving me a punishment for an asay? A mitzvah asay means something I have to do, something I could do. And over here, it's not that I'm wearing the garment without the tzitzis. I just don't have a chiyuv in the first place. Amar le, and this is almost the $1 million shaila of the mitzvah is a mitzvah kiyumes. So as long as I don't wear a four-corner garment, I don't have to wear tzitzis. That was almost Rav Ketina's response. That what's the problem? So I rounded the corners. It doesn't have four corners. What did the Malach respond? A scary response. Bisman dika rischa. When there is a anger, a wrath in Shamayim, and Shinan, they punish those that do like you. Says the Gemara, quite scary. So if you're going to tell me it's an obligation on the person to wear tzitzis, now I understand why the Hashem in his anger is punishing, because you should have done it. There's no chiyuv bichlal, so what did he do wrong? Elamai, says the Gemara, Chayvas Gavru. Nehi, very good, the Chayvas Rachmana. Very good. That the Torah obligates. Kimakasi talis dibas chayuva. When would the Chayvas Gavru come into effect, says the Gemara? You can't just say it's always. That doesn't make sense. Rather, when is it going to be a Chayvas Gavru? When you're wearing a garment that has a chiyuv. But kimaskasi tal slavas chiyuvu michayver achmana. Does the Torah ever obligate you in that case? Elohachi kamarle. Rather, what's the Malach saying? And these are the penetrating words, says Ramoshe. Tatzdike lemifter nafshach. Tatzdike lemifter nafshach mitzitzis. You're doing things, tatzdike, tactics, you're doing in order to exempt yourself from tzitzis. That is what gets God angry, or I should say better, when there is an anger in Shamayim, whatever that means, that's when Hashem will incur that wrath on the person. So we see over here something incredible, that it's the circumvention, Dr. Amaisha, trying to not go put on tzitzis. What do you have? Whether it's also a fascinating Gemara, because is this a chiyuv? Is this an isser? Not exactly klar, but what is klar is that it's quite scary. That when there's this risk of the Shemayim, what happens? That's when Hashem takes it out on such a person. Absolutely incredible. And with that, we go weiter. Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Tuvi bar Kisna Amar Shmuel Kali Kovsa Chayavim b'tzitzis. Clothing that are in the drawer, you have to put on tzitzis. Moide Shmuel bizman, and Shmuel is moide bizakin. Excuse me. A zaken who made a four-corner garment for his kavod to be used as tachrichim, burial shrouds, is pater from tzitzis. My taima, shetachasa ba'amar achmana. Zok the Torah, it has to be something that covers you with, and holav maskasi avidas, not made to cover. But says the Gemara, b'yishaita vade ramina le misham lo yiglarash. Charif asahu. Says the Gemara, when the person dies, we make sure to put tzitzis even on the burial shrouds, because we don't want it to be a matziv of lo yiglarash. It looks like you're wearing a garment without tzitzis, is a mockery to the dead, and therefore you want to even put tzitzis on at that moment. It's similar to the halacha that in the cemetery you have to tuck in your tzitzis so you don't, poke fun at the mesim that they can't have a mitzvah tzitzis. In a similar vein, we put tzitzis on the tachrichim so the mesim don't feel bad, whatever that means. Says the Gemara, Merachava, Merav Yehuda, Talis shenikre chutz mishalosh yitfar. If a talis of the corner ripped up less than 3 fingers from the corner, you could sew it up. Taich shalish, but if it ripped within the 3 fingers of the corner, lo yitfar, you cannot sew it up. Salacha brought in Shulchan Aruch Siman Tesvav. Tanami hachi tal shenikra chosel shal shitfar taich shalish. Remeir meliyitfar v'chamar miyitfar v'shavin shal yavi afilu ama al ama mimakam acher. You can't go and buy a corner with tzitzis on and just sew that corner on the corner, patch it up. That you cannot do. And similarly on the last line, they agree that one cannot bring tcheles. They agree that one cannot bring tzitzis from somewhere else and put it on this garment. But as long as it's not torn. I read that wrong. One more time. You could yes bring tittis, meaning if you take tittis off of garment A, you are yes allowed to go and put it on a new garment. Ubelvad, provided as we turn over to Mem Alpha Mid Beis, Shaloi Tehei Mufsekes, as long as the thread is not torn. Says the Gemara, Shmas Mina, what do we learn from here? Matira mi beged lebeged. Perfect Gemara, Dilma, the Ibelav. Maybe it means that if the Beloy, excuse me, maybe it means only if the first garment is worn out, meaning maybe stam to take from garment A to garment B, you're not allowed. If the first garment is worn out, then you could. Tana Rabbanan says the Gemara 3 lines down, Memalva midbeis, talish ekuloi techeles. A talis that is entirely blue, called minei tzevainim, all colors, paitrim ba, satisfy the mitzvah of tzitzis, chutz, mikala ilan, except for kala ilan, which is a different type of blue. The reason is, as we've seen, kala ilan looks just like techeles. Meisvei, frakti Gemara, talis ain't by pater elamina. What do you mean? A talis is only pater with his own min. Tal shegula tcheles, says the Braisa, maybe tcheles. Bring actual tcheles, davar acher, v'tailaba. V'kal ilan lo yavi v'mevi kosher. So frak the Gemara, here it says, avada lechatchila, you shouldn't bring kal ilan. But if you did, it is kosher. Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak lo kasho. Kan bitalis bas arba chutin. Says the Gemara, this is with a talis of 4 tzitzis threads. Kam betalis bas shmoine chutin. And the Bryce is talking about a talis with 8 threads. The first bracelet says, Kala Ilan, this blue does not work, is a case where there's only 4 threads, 2 of tchelas and 2 of this blue. This is not good. Why? Because they're all the same color. However, the latter brisa that says Kol Ilam B'diavad would be good is you have 4. The original 4 is 2 tcheles and 2 of any other color. Let's call it white. And then the extra ones, they're going to be of blue. And therefore, since you do not need these extra strings, that's the reason why B'diavad it's going to be kosher. And Bez says upon this, Shmas Mina Matir Mi Begel Beged. But Nachum says no raya. Why Dama Di Avid? Maybe only means if it happened, but avada it shouldn't be done. Lichat chila. Says the Gemara. Let's go a little bit deeper into removing the tzitzis from garment A to garment B. Itmar, we learned in a brayso, we're about 10 lines down. The first one line is mi beged. Rav Amar in metir beged lebeged u'shmol Amar matira mi beged lebeged. Rav Amar in melikim miner liner. All different halachas about doing one from another. Chanukah, cannot lay one candle from the next. Says Shmuel, yes you could. Shmuel Amar nikin liner. Rav Amar in halacha Rabbi Shimon v'Gereira, dragging the bench p'sikreisha. Rav says we do not paskin like Rav Shimon in such a scenario, as we'll see in a moment. Shmuel Amar halacha Rav Shimon v'Gereira. Amar Abaye, kol mili demarav kirav. And everything we paskin like Rav. Halacha kirav lebar, except mehani tlas. These 3 David to Shmuel. Which 3? The 3 we just said. Number 1, Matir mi beged lebeged. Number 2, Malik in the air. And Bahalacha Rav Shimon b'Gereira. How do we know this? Titania, as we learned in a brayser, Rabbi Shimon Aimer. On Shabbos, you're allowed to drag a chair, a bench, a table, as long as, not a table, I made it up, a bed, a chair, or a bench, as long as you don't have kavanah to make the chritz. Rabbi Yehuda Maserle, and excuse me, that's Rav Shimon, and that's where we're asking, as long as it's without kavanah, that's where it's going to be allowed, dragging the bench. Why? Because you don't have a kavanah. Darshain a miskavein. Rav Shimon says it's mutter. Rav Yehuda says it's aser. Now, how does this relate to psik reisha? That is a different discussion. Says the Gemara, Rav Yehuda Maserle lekatzra. Rav Yehuda would give his towels to a katzra, laundry man, and he wasn't worried that maybe what's going to happen, in the process of the laundry, something's going to rip. The tcheles will rip off, and let's put on a blue thread. Whereas Chanina Avalei Sisa, Rav Chanina would roll the tzitzis into a ball to make sure that the tzitzis don't rip in the laundry. Ravina Chayle Machat, Ravina would sew them into the corner of the talis. You'd make a little pocket over there so that the tzitzis would not rip in the laundry process. How many threads do you put on? Beishami Oimrim Dalid, Ubeis Hillel Oimrim Gimel, Pakamate Mishulashes. And how far down should they hang down? Beishami Oimrim Dalid, 4 Tfachim. Beis Hillel Oimrim, 4 fingers, excuse me. Beis Hillel Oimrim Gimel. Beis Hillel says 3. V'shalosh Beis Hillel Oimrim, these 3, Achas Me'arba Tefach shall call Ada. When Beis Hillel said 3 fingers, that means 1/4 of a tefach. Says the Gemara, Rav Papa, we have a little math. Tefach daraisa arba begoidel. Midaraisa tika tefach, 4 fingers with the thumb. Shes beketana, 6 fingers including the little finger. And chamesh betilta, 5 using the middle finger, meaning each finger is a different width. So says the Gemara, it's going to be 5, 3, and 6, depending on which finger that you use. Amar Ravuna, says Ravuna, with this we conclude. Dalid b'teich arba mushuleshes dalid. The tzitzit should be 4 folded up threads within 4 fingers on the edge of the garment, and arba, it hangs down. Rav Yehuda Amar, no, shleish b'tzach b'shlesh kimul. Amar Rav Papa Hilchasa, what's lamaisa? Arba b'teich shalosh b'shlesh arba. That is the halacha. It has to be 4 folded up threads within 3 fingers of the edge, and it hangs down 4 fingers amount. We'll stop over here as the Gemara is going to continue discussing the shear b'siyata d'shmaya.